before you divulge anything, before you lay into anything, one of the things that would be really good is, I know you well. I've had the privilege of working with you from your earlier days to your nowadays. But for the rare individual on LinkedIn that doesn't know Issa, if they don't know, they need to get to know. Can you just give people some context about who you are and your role? Don't give away the subject, however. We're not there yet.
Okay, cool. So my name's Issa. I'm one of the sales managers here at Cognism. I've been in the company for almost 3 years now, which is a bit mad. Joined as an AE in the small business team and sort of worked my way up to a manager role. And then I manage the team that I started in, which is really cool. Different people though, but quite a fun full circle moment. Prior to that, I was in tech sales as an SDR for like 2.5 years. Started that career just at the beginning of COVID, which was interesting, especially trying to SDR at that time. And before that, like, was never planning on being in sales. Like most of us fell into it. But I've loved it ever since.
Okay. So again, before we properly dive in, to just add some context here, liven it up a bit. You're familiar with Two Truths and a Lie, right?
I am, yeah.
I've kind of got like a conversion of about 50-60. Like the team could probably like verify that better on the episodes that we've done so far. So I might get this right, I might get it wrong, but let's see. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Shoot.
Okay, Two Truths and a Lie. I'm a certified scuba diver. I won a poetry contest and I was homeschooled.
See, the thing is, it's difficult because I've worked with you, so I've got some context with you.
Wanted to make it tough.
You're creative, so the poetry, like I think that seems like second nature. I don't know, the idea of Issa being homeschooled and having to stay in one place doesn't fit the category that I have you in. You're more like a free spirit. However, I'm going to ruin it and actually say you are not a certified scuba diver.
I was certified scuba diver. I wasn't homeschooled, you were right. There's no way. I think my mum would hate it if I was homeschooled. She likes to say I've got ants in my pants because I cannot keep still. So I don't think she would enjoy that for a second. Yeah. Close though. I thought you were going to get that.
I thought, you think it's typical, isn't it? You know, with sales, sometimes we can over talk when we're meant to stop.
Yeah.
It's like, I had it there. That was the close, people.
Just
that's
watch
where
you
I should
negotiate yourself out of that one, Shiv. What are you doing? Come on.
All right, brilliant. So the thing is, yeah, we're about to go into it, yeah? And the title gives it away. And what I'm really interested is, before we actually do that, can you just share something Issa specific about your journey to sales before we get into any of the questions that I've got for you about today's topic of the Why Did It Fail podcast?
Yeah, so I guess, do you mean like sort of how I fell into it or how I came across sales as a career?
A combination of both would be really beautiful.
Okay. So honestly, it was like a total accident. I was studying to be a lawyer and graduated law school and then hated it. So decided that it just was not the career path for me. And then just like something quite major in my life happened. My dad had a business and he very suddenly passed away when I was 25. And because of that, I had to sort of leave what I was doing at the time, which was sort of working for Apple to try and get into their corporate program and take over the family business, which was a design and marketing company. And a big part of that was me then having to sell into businesses. And I honestly had no idea what I was doing. I did sell some stuff and I quite enjoyed it. But as I was sort of prospecting at the time, which I didn't even know that was what it was called, I was just sort of thinking to myself, like, how do people break into these big companies? And I remember like the big one for me was like, how would you get into like a company like Disney? Like, that's such a massive organization. So many people must want to work with them. How would you even begin to do that? And as I looked into it, I found out there was a role called an SDR, which I had no idea what it was. And that their job was to essentially break into accounts, and it was the start of sales. So my master plan was to get a job as an SDR for 6 months, learn everything, and then come back to the business. And then I ended up moving to London with a job and fell in love with it and sort of never looked back. So it was a complete shift in my whole ideas for my career. But like the best things in life, right? They're unplanned, but they end up working out the best way. So yeah, that's how I landed it.
Thanks so much for sharing, especially with stuff that's like really personal and intimate. So thanks so much for having the courage to share that, and obviously that journey. Well, I'm glad that you're here. So without further ado, let's kick it off. So the title of the podcast gives it away, right?
Yeah,
Why did it fail? So are you able to share the story that we're going to be unpacking today of that failure?
for sure. So honestly, when I was asked to do this, I was thinking there's like literally so many fails that I could talk about. I think there's so much that went wrong early in my sales career, to be honest. But they were all learned, which is good. But like one that really stands out to me was when I first got promoted to AE, which was just before I joined Cognism. I was promoted into a brand new market at the time for the company, which was the Nordics, which I think in itself is like quite a different market to work in based on prospecting in the UK.
Mhm.
And I remember I was selling to I think the biggest department store in Sweden, and was doing like all this work on this deal to try and get this deal over the line. And at the time, I was selling a Martech solution, so we were able to sort of generate personalized images in real time in email, which was like a really cool technology. Um, and I think I made a deck that was 36 pages long, where I individually mocked up 12 different campaign ideas for
Damn.
this like department store using all of our technology and spent tons of time on it. Got loads of really positive feedback from my leadership
Mhm.
team around this was a great idea. Took it to this person, flew to Sweden to meet them. They like promised me they'd get it in front of their CEO for sign off, and then they just ghosted me and nothing ever happened. And then 3 months later, they said, "Yeah, we're not ready to move forward for another couple of years." And I just remember being like, "How can I be doing all this work to get like no results?"
Mhm.
And then I ended up meeting this sales trainer randomly on a networking event and was telling her the story. And after about 5 minutes of explaining it, she was just like, "Well, I could have told you within 10 seconds that was the wrong thing to do." Um, and then told me why. And it was like eye opening. And
Yeah.
that was a massive pivotal moment in my journey as a salesperson around like qualification, identifying champions, testing champions, give and get, all that stuff that we know about. But yeah, at the time was like an enormous fail and really did not go to plan. So yeah, probably the most pivotal one in my career so far.
What made you think it was going to work?
I just think I thought the campaign ideas were great. I was getting really
Mhm.
good feedback from this individual. They were really excited about it. Um, and I just didn't know. Like I didn't know that if I wasn't at power, then a lot of what I was doing was worthless because if I'm not in the room with the person that can make the decision and I'm not getting their input or understanding what's of importance to them, then what am I pitching and who am I actually pitching to?
That makes sense. Okay, that makes perfect sense. So there's going to be something that like inherently that gut feeling, that red flag. Was there a moment where you saw that red flag? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, I think when I was comparing myself to my colleagues who are working in the UK,
Hmm.
so they were sort of doing similar work and it was leading to something. And they were getting further along on their deal, they were progressing, they were multi threading, and I was just sort of staying stagnant. And
Hmm.
I was getting told one thing, but my gut was sort of telling me that's not what was going to happen. But at the time, I just wanted to win that deal, right? So I kind of pushed through and ignored that red flag, so to speak. And looking back on that, that is such a silly thing to do, right? But at the time, I think you've got blinkers on and you
Yeah.
don't know what to do.
So it's interesting that you say about the blinkers side of it because like hindsight's 2020, right? And it's great to be able to look back and say, I could have done this, should have done that. Now I know that's the thing that I should have done. Are you able to now pinpoint what exactly did go wrong?
Yeah, I didn't have a champion. I had a coach. So then when I did medic training about a year later, the pieces started to fall into place, and this whole concept of testing your contact, testing your champion, and seeing if they've got power and influence. This person couldn't get me in front of the right people, and when they said they could take my ideas and pitch them to their wider leadership team to get buy-in, that wasn't true, and that was the bit that I think I got wrong because you can't give everything to a deal without knowing that it's going to be seen by the right people. And then I understood the whole concept of give and get.
That makes sense. Touching on what you said about like the coach and the champion side of it. Now, obviously, this is a sales podcast. A lot of sales professionals watch it across the board. Hopefully globally. Um, with that being said, for people that are earlier in their journey, can you just elaborate a little bit on that coach and champion side of things? Just for people that are newer to a business that they're joining or newer to the sales career, to them that might it rings a bell, but can you elaborate?
Sure. So the biggest difference between a coach and a champion is that if you contact a champion, they've got what we would say is power and influence. So they can essentially help you move the needle on that deal. And that can be through a few different behaviors. So perhaps there may be a more junior member of a team, you pitch your initial solution to them, they tell you some pain, and then you want to sort of get to power in that organization or get to a person that can make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
If they're a champion, they can get you in that room. They can go to their boss and say, look, this is really important. I want you to spend 30 minutes of your days meeting the sales rep, and they can actually help that happen. Or they've got information around how to purchase technology, anything they can do to essentially help move that needle forward. If they aren't able to move that needle forward and they don't have power and influence, they can still be someone that's like cheerleading for you, but they're a coach because they can't get you to where you need to get to in that deal. And you need
That
to
makes
know
sense.
the power of that contact, because once you've got that down, you know who to put your efforts into.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for like unpacking that. I always think it's good. Sometimes with like analogies and acronyms, we often, especially in sales, we throw things out there and sometimes someone's like, nah, what are you talking about?
What
So
does
it's always good.
that mean? Yeah.
So I know again, hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
Can you remember how you reacted in that situation when it didn't go to plan?
I think I was like really shocked, and like pretty deflated, I'm not going to lie, because I thought what I was doing was the right thing and I was putting so much effort into it and I just really wanted to do well as a new AE. And to have all of your sort of hard work not land is like really disheartening, especially when you've got like quite a big number over your head and it's a new market and you've got all that pressure. So
Mhm.
that sucked. Like it really sucked. Um, probably the bigger takeaway though was when that sales coach told me I could have told you this was going to be wrong. And I remember saying
Mm.
that to another friend of mine at the time who was also an AE. He was pretty new, and she was like, "Do you know what? When you were telling me what you were doing, I thought it was totally amazing and it was the right thing." So we were both like really taken aback by the fact that this sales coach was like, "This is not how you run this deal." Um, but then once I got that, it was also a bit of a sense of relief because I knew where I'd gone wrong. So it's like a double-edged sword, right? Like you want people to point out the mistakes because then it helps you grow, but also that does
Mhm.
hurt. But as long as I guess you take the positive from it and then apply that feedback, then it's only a positive thing at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, agreed. That makes sense. It's interesting because you stole my next question, by the way. So just throwing that out there. That was my next question. So, what did you learn from that? Like Issa now, looking back on Issa then, what does Issa take from that? That in that specific question, yeah, and that specific scenario, what does Issa do differently now based on that?
God, like
If you had to redo it, what would you have done?
loads of stuff. So I think probably one of the biggest things is like qualifying. So now looking back, I would have spent more time understanding who that individual was and like I said, how much power and influence they have,
Mm-hmm.
where they sit in the organization, who they report into, and what that whole decision making structure looks like. I've also learned to value my time as a salesperson. I think when I first started, I was in sort of customer service mode and I was like, everything I'm doing to please this buyer, and I've got to do whatever I can to jump through these hoops to get them to purchase from me. And now I've understood that what I'm doing actually is strategic and guiding and thought leading. That has value. My time has value. And I'm only going to give that to somebody that then can get me somewhere with that deal. So it's not
Okay.
about being selfish, but it's about understanding that I'm operating in an efficient manner to help move the needle forward.
Okay. You mentioned moving the needle forward quite a few times, and it's a phrase that I use as well. Yeah. So, what are some of the key components that you would say help move deals forward?
Mutual action plans is probably one of the biggest ones. So
What's the mutual action plan?
So if you've got a champion, this is another way to test your champion. You put together a mutual action plan where you've got things you've got to deliver on and they've got things to deliver on. So, for example, if you're building a business case and you need metrics, they need to deliver the metrics for that business case.
Mm-hmm.
You then put together that business case, they've got to then get it in front of the right person and get you in the room. So
Okay.
you put this plan in place that's going to help you win this deal because ultimately it's a partnership, right? If your
Mm-hmm.
contact wants the solution in place, you work with them to plan how that's going to happen. And it allows you to hold each other accountable. So you say, if I do this, then you've got to do this, and then I'll do this, and you do this, and that's going to help us get to the end.
Okay. That makes sense. So with the scenario that you had,
Mm-hmm.
and that the champion, the coach, the individual that said to you, could have told you that. I often find, even in things that I do and things that people that I work with, personal life, work life, is mentally you think sometimes that everything's a complete failure. However, you look back on it, at least one thing worked. At least one. I'm not saying it was just one, but at least one thing did work. What was that, or those things that did work in that process?
I think my understanding of the organization was pretty good, and my understanding of the use cases that were applicable and the sort of value we could drive. I just think I was in the wrong room with the wrong people. So
Love
do
that.
I do believe that if I'd got to power and delivered that message to the right individual, that deal would have closed.
Okay, love that. So, double-edged question. I don't know if that made sense, but it made sense to me. Double-edged question, right? Is how has that failure? How has that shaped the way that you sell and engage today? Before you answer, pre-manager Esa and current manager Esa, if you're able to answer it like that, please.
Sure. So I guess pre-manager ESA, it shaped honest. It sounds ridiculous, but it's literally changed my whole process entirely. It really gave me like focus on what deals to spend time on, where to put my energy,
Mm-hmm.
when to hold back, and how to better forecast, how to explain to my manager, I don't think I'm at power, I'm not with the right person. How can I get there? I just learned like what not to do the hard way. So
Uh-huh.
it made me a better rep. And when I applied all those behaviors and tweaked them, I then started to be like a top performing rep in the company, which is like a massive turnaround from like not closing anything to then being like top salesperson 2 years in a row. So it just shifted my entire mindset around how I work and what I do and giving and getting, basically, which it's been like amazing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for manager me, it's influenced how I coach people. So I now encourage my team to look for these behaviors early on, qualify champions, test their contacts, map an account.
Mm-hmm.
And on our pipeline reviews, these are the sort of questions that I ask. Like, who are you speaking to? Why are you speaking to them? Are they helping you move the needle? Are you multi-threaded? Are you at power? And that's helped my team sort of think more strategically, close more deals, forecast more accurately, increase our win rate. So it's had like an amazing ripple effect on everything I've done since that point, which has been great.
Okay. So tying that all together, and thanks so much for all that you've shared so far. Twofold again.
Mm-hmm.
Keep changing the end word, like before it was like double edged. So, what advice would you give to some of the new sellers out there that are AEs or thinking of going into an AE role, front facing selling role? And then also, what advice would you give to any new managers out there, being a new manager yourself?
So for new AEs, don't expect to have all the answers at once. I think, especially now when LinkedIn is full of sales theories and everyone's got their opinion on what to do right and what to do wrong, it's really easy to think that you suck and you don't know what you're doing. And you can listen to as many people as you want, but ultimately, I'm a big believer that you will learn by doing and by failing. And
Yes.
you have to go through losing ops and getting frustrated and missing the point and potentially pitching to a coach, not a champion, to then learn not to do that again. And I think every great salesperson's gone through that. And the reason they've become great is because they've gone through that. So don't expect to have all the answers. Be really open to failure, but just make sure you learn from it. And I think advice to a manager would just be to treat reps how you wish you were treated as a rep. So in those moments of like failing as a rep, if you've not had a good manager that supported you, or if you've not had the guidance that you thought you should have got, like make sure you deliver that to your reps. Because I think if you put yourself in their shoes, you're just always going to be able to support them. And I think a big part of this job is just support,
Mm-hmm.
always strategy, right? It's emotional support, it's helping you stay on track, it's keeping you positive, keeping you focused. So yeah, if you put yourself in their shoes, I think you can't fail.
Okay. So as we're about to close up, in those moments of failure, being completely honest, what do you do or who do you go to get you through that?
Oh, that's a good question. Younger Issa would have literally needed to speak to about 10 different people, um, like go through it a million times, rant and process it all. I think now, like, it's just part and parcel of my job, and I understand that. Like, don't get me wrong, I still do like to go and vent to people. That we speak a lot. I speak to my manager, speak to my partner, but I've realized like it's just part of the growth journey. And as cheesy as that sounds, I think when you accept the fact that you're supposed to fail at work and you're supposed to grow from it, then it just becomes second nature, and you take that pressure off yourself of always having to be perfect and 100% right. And when you do that, it becomes easier to digest and manage. So what I like to do is like stop. I've got like a working doc where I just document everything. I'll write down why it didn't work, what I've learned from it, and then I'll always go back and reflect on it a few days later. And that process of me like writing it down and processing it and thinking about it and actually giving myself actionable takeaways has helped me like continue to grow.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for your time, all of your efforts, all of your failures, and all of your honesty today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks. It's been great to be here. I appreciate it.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
See you later.